we are going to be looking at 5 presentations starting from number 244, 257, 178, 296, and 204. Because of the protocol, I cannot reveal the name and college of the students. So we'll be addressing them through their numbers as we go along. And at the end, have a jury deliberation to arrive at the citation. So without wasting much time, I'll stop sharing my screen and I invite number 244 to share their screen and get started.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just sharing my screen now. Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes. Go ahead and go full screen.
Yeah.
Your time starts now.
I have designed this thesis as a story of the originals of Mumbai and the sinking city, a story of a road and a rebellious dreamer. The process of this thesis is designed to take you through the passages of time and space. My journey begins in the year. One second. I'm sorry, I think there's some. My journey begins in the year 2020, a fourth-year student studying the reclamations of the city of Mumbai and the villainous coastal road, its victims, the artisanal communities, mangroves, and aquatic life. This was when I realized that a time-based process is needed for my thesis so that it can strategically cater to this multifaceted problem. Here, I would like to emphasize on two keywords: envisioning, that generated a timeline, and communities, that split this project into multiple scales from urban design and then into architecture. And as I read as many books as I could get my hands on, which opened my eyes to the three narratives of the city: a high-tech oasis, the coastal road, and the artisanal communities somewhere stuck in between. I then created pictorial representations of the research to better understand the history of these communities and the mangroves soon to be destroyed by reclamations, the city's character and agendas for development engulfed in bureaucracy. I then sourced maps to understand predictions of the city and its coast up to the year 2050, the predicted year of catastrophe. I now stood at the precipice of destruction and sinking cities, where I had a dream of an elevated urban community with a resilient future of its own. And this formed my thesis topic, envisioning the existence of coastal communities. I then began mapping the various communities on the western coast of Mumbai as I arrived at Versova Kolivada. I studied Versova and its beach and creek fronts to understand the demographics of this community. Massing studies were done, showcasing the scattered and dilapidated state of this Kolivada, a mere shadow of its past. I would like to narrate my experience of when I took this picture. A man snatched my phone and forced me to follow him. His words haunting me to this day. Aaj tu idhar se bach ke nahi jayega. After roughing me up for a while, did they believe I was only a student? And when they said to me, Bhai, hame bas wo chahiye, jo humse chhina gaya hai. So what does one envision when he holds the fates of a community in his hands? I envision an enabled and elevated form of urbanism with multiple axes of living, a community that is resilient with its own ecologies, a civilization that is a fisherman's paradise, interconnected and interdependent. To achieve this vision, I designed 3 timelines: Mumbai, Versova, and the coastal road. I would like to reiterate the importance of my process with respect to time and scales that this project aims to deal with. And so we begin in the year 2020 with ecology and sociology. Using urban principles, I designed this plan for the creek front and the beach front, which I used to design the first typologies of this project, the resilient typologies. They attach to the beachfront to safeguard against storms and heavy rainfall, and then attach to the creek front for mangrove and flood protection. For the social typologies, I asked the urban grain a series of questions. Can we use the resources we already have to add life to a space and create a place? Can urban design link ecology with social resilience to form a community? Why can't we extend the axis of the street to create a connect with 2 different parallels of living? Can simple actions of additional living create a sense of activated frontages, bringing a new paradigm to urban living? Using this, I designed the social adaptive typologies. Modular and retrofitting systems, they will simply add to the building sections, adding and activating the facades and the beachfront with multiple avenues of interaction. This will help the Koli reconnect to the sea and its treasures. Now, with ecology and sociology set in motion, I looked at economy and the victims of circumstance. To understand urban design with respect to resilience and economy, I studied Clark Key and Big U. This began creating the idea of how economy, ecology, and society can be designed together. And so I welcome you to the Fisherman Experience. Attaching now to the creek front, eco tours are set up with fishermen arcs for the future. But first, three main urban magnets were designed for the Kolis and the city. First, the town square. It's designed using the principles of heterogeneity and adaptive reuse, creating plazas and bread and breakfasts. Next, the catch and cook port. Imagine this: catch fresh seafood with the Kolis in the day, return by nighttime, and feast in the flavors of the Koli vada under the starry sky. Next, aquaculture and mangrove pots. I specifically designed this sector to regenerate the mangrove and creek ecologies. We now enter the year 2035. As I asked the Kolis, would they like to become businessmen? We start with the planning principles for the arcs, a primary urban axis to connect to the envisioning that we saw before, and a secondary axis for a green belt in the future. The architecture process revolved around elevated live, work, and play for the Kolis and the migrants together. I then designed a specific program that begins with a 16 square meter modular unit that evolves into fish drying or mini vegetable farms to start this revolution in bamboo and steel. So now we looked at a fully functioning ecosystem of its own, the fishermen arcs. The Kolis can live, work, eat, and sell. The city can learn, consume, and interact. At the center of this revolution are the arcs, the living and production arcs. Then with market spaces and eateries to innovation centers, creating a circular economy for the Kolis of the future. We now look at the urban section through the living arc, which is integrated into the town center and the water courts. The detail of the living arc shows an elevated system with informal schools, communities, and kitchens for the Kolis and the migrants. Next, we look at the urban section of the production arcs, showing how fresh harvest can be consumed in the cafes and the markets. The detail of this section, however, shows how the harvest can be sorted, smoked, dried, and packaged for consumption and sold to the entire city and maybe even the entire world. Now, for the structural typologies, I designed them using bamboo and steel, creating walls and substructures. The structures can therefore harbor small boats, play areas, and vegetable units, all the while safeguarding against storms and increased water levels that we saw as predictions. Functioning in unison, these arcs will help the Kolis grow, live, and produce. These arcs now become a tool in urban renewal, setting in motion the next stage of this project as we close the fisherman arcs. The future is now. The year is 2040. The envisioning is getting closer. Here I designed two key systems for the Kolis. First, the dike, which is based on Dutch hydroengineering systems. This paves way for new circulation patterns, tidal energy grids, and water infrastructure that creates a self-sustenance for the Kolis. Second, I formulated a renewed typology, designed looking at multifunctional urban spaces and a simple space form structure. The typology can evolve into high-rise and high densities. But when this typology works with the dike, it creates something interesting. It creates sectors of growth and nourishment, consumption and congregation, and movement and culture, thus creating a diverse ecosystem with multiple axes of living. The Koli Vada is interconnected and interdependent. The fisherman civilization is now born and elevated, with the fishermen at the center of this future. So what about the coastal road, the villain that started this entire story? We now look at the coastal road, its timeline, and how I envision it becomes an opportunity for the city of Mumbai. At first, public systems increase on the road and a green takeover begins. Then public shared spaces and public transportation increases for the future. The road becomes a production opportunity for the city. A curse is turned into a boon. The road then attaches itself into Warsaw as a green belt, a self-sustaining paradise on its own, with the arcs, the market spaces, civilizations, and the dike. The curtain now rolls down on my thesis. Ganesh, an old man himself now, thinking, ये बंदा तो काफी अच्छा निकला. शायद उस दिन इतना भी नहीं मारना चाहिए था. I now conclude my thesis as we go back to where it all started, an architect with a dream and the Kohli Cooperative. Starting in the year 2022, I walk, not alone, from Worli to Chimbai to Juhu, and then to Versova. This completes the envisioning, the arc of time, and my envisioning of the coastal communities of Mumbai. Thank you.
Thank you, 244, bang on time. So kudos on that. And I request the jury panel to ask their questions or give their feedback, if any.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Go ahead,
Yes,
ma'am.
I'm audible, right?
Yes.
Okay. A good work and a good envisioning of the coastal communities. So I like the way you presented and you took us through the entire range of things. Just one concern, like because this is very similar to one idea which is floated in Nigeria for the floating. It's a floating school which was floated. Okay,
Right.
similar to that. I mean, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it's similar to that. And there
Okay.
are some challenges when you are building in the waterfront or in the water, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
have you thought about those challenges in terms of the structural system or in terms of the way
Yes.
in which the tides are going to work,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So
Yes.
can you just throw some light on that?
Can I just, I'll take you to my structural typologies first, so I can show you from there. And then also
Yes,
I'll
yes. You
show
were
you
talking
something.
about some dike system.
Yes, so the dikes
Yes.
come as the re-estuarization of Mumbai. But first we'll talk about the structural system.
Mhm.
So I'll take you to this page. So here I would like to just talk about how and why I designed the structure the way it is. I had studied so like I said, I had read a few books, and one of the few books I read about was bio and marine engineering and how hydrodynamics of a creek work. And I found something very interesting, that a creek, especially the one that we have at Warsaw, it has 4 ways of dynamic wave movement. So it requires a tensile as well as a compressive system. So I tried designing something in a way that it can have a minimal footprint. So it has a very minimal footprint, but it's interconnected with the tensile systems. Now, this is just the first layer. That is a layer which is an arc. It is not intended for any flotation, any movement. It is just to arc and stabilize them so that the spaces can then have the harboring of the boats and then they come off the creek edge, pardon me. Now, regarding the dike itself, the dike is the next layer of protection for the Koliwada. So the book that I read about soak Mumbai into an estuary speaks about how Mumbai at once, well, we all know it's 7 islands history, but there is an estuarization that we need to look at about Mumbai, and it's being clogged and it's suffocated. So my aim when I created this dike was to allow for this circulation of water throughout the dike, not allowing it to be clogged, but allowing it to move past. So these 2 aspects, when catered together, is how I looked at then the final, the renewed typology about how the structure with a space frame and it floats off, or it can even be anchored or harbored.
So just another question related to this, just taking it a little bit ahead. What kind of architectural language or vocabulary are you building on the seafront? Because there is a particular character which is there to the Koliwada community, and there is also the existing fabric which is there. How are you plugging in all of that, or are you designing something totally different or totally in contrast with this?
Okay, so I mean, I understand it. It does look like that it's building from there, but there are 2 things that looked at the entire architectural language for me. And it started with these drawings that I did when I was sitting at the beachfront, and I was just looking at these spaces. They have these dilapidated spaces and they have empty spaces. So the architectural language began with adaptive reuse and retrofitting. And I looked at, because of that adaptive reuse concept or a simple modular concept, this idea started generating the entire modularity of the renewed typology you see in the future. But just to talk about the intangible aspect that my entire architecture looks at, it's looking at how the polis can live, work, and play together. It's less about the architectural language on a whole, but it's about the minute communities that I want to create for them. I want them to understand that when they exit one space, which is private, it doesn't have to be another private space. It's rather a public space for interactions to happen. And that's how my architectural language for the community was looked at. Not a separate building, but an entire building together.
Thank you so much. That's all from my end. Thank you.
Yeah. Architect Nandu and Architect Amit.
I don't have a question, but I want to compliment 244 on your overall approach, and I think it's an outstanding effort. I just want to say one thing to that. When you do present, an architectural idea,
yes,
you need to disassociate yourself from it. There is an idea, and then there is you, right?
Right.
And I think this experience that you had has made it very personal.
Very personal, yes.
But as a practicing professional, you must learn to disassociate yourself and make. If anything, your proposal is too optimistic. It's not a bad thing.
Okay.
But it's too good to be true. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing. You're coming from the right place, you have the right intentions, and it's a great effort.
All right. Thank you, sir. It did make it personal, but it also helped me in one way. I managed to stay in contact with the people who roughed me up. And they told me, like, once they finally believed, okay, you know what, I'm a student because I had the card and everything. They told me that, tu wapas kabhi bhi aayega, you call us. Don't walk through the Koliwada without us. So it helped. It of course helped. But yeah, it was quite scary.
Architect Nandu?
Yeah. Hi. So let me say 244. Let me start by complimenting you on your work. Quite rigorous. I like the story of the timelines and the way you set up. I have 3 questions.
Okay.
So when you have those case studies, right? So
yes.
Why Clarkey and why the big U, or whatever?
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Why couldn't you find something closer in context and all that? So that's a basic question, just to get a feel of what your thought process at that point was.
Mm-hmm.
The second question was the sense of smell, right? Now, Koliwadas have their distinct
smell. Yes, yeah. Very much so. Yes.
So have you done anything with that? That was the second one. The third one was, so you set up all this framework, the grid, and have you left something for the community to do, right? There are like Elemental's work in Chile, where he does one half of it
and then the other
leaves the rest for them to do it. So do you have anything like that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. So starting for the first question, there were a few indigenous studies that I also did regarding culture and communities. For example, the Kochi Fort. But the very specific reason I looked at Clarke Quay and Big U is that if you look at Clarke Quay and its history at where it started, or if you look at Singapore at a whole where it started, my father is a merchant navy captain and he's been to Singapore way before like Singapore is what it's now. And he tells me it stinked. And that's a fact. It stinked. But it turned over because of the idea of how resilience can be slowly imbibed and economic strengthening should happen. And meritocracy, that's the entire important aspect that is in Clarke Quay, meritocracy. And that's how I envisioned it for the coalies. And when these communities come here, it should be a meritocracy. Only the coalies can do what they do. So they should be able to sell it in that manner. When I looked at Big U, it's an entire community-based ecological study. It's for a similar situation. Manhattan is probably sinking by the year 2050, according to studies. And it recently had floods that destroyed a lot of its parts. So when Big U and this project is coming up, it's looking at the communities together to create these spaces of sports, create the spaces. So I look at it as, you know what, I'm going to look at these two projects side by side and then create the formulation of the next aspect in the entire project with all these aspects kept together. That's why these two case studies in specific were done for me, or these two case studies are here in the presentation. So can you just reiterate the second question?
Sorry to
Second
cut
one
you
is
down, but
the sense
we are
of
short
smell.
on time, so just be very quick with the.
Yeah, okay. So for the sense of smell, sir, I've kept it as is. I thought I'll keep it as an original experience, probably something that I haven't been able to cater to in specific. And I agree, I have fallen short there. And last, it's about the modular typology. When I designed the social typologies that we see here, it was actually designed on the basis of a catalog. I'll give you this catalog, and it's a very simple space frame, and you can design and play with the entire building sections as your own. And that's how the entire thing. So I studied a few Bartlett's thesis projects, and that's how the idea and the envisioning came across. It's their project, it's for them, and I wanted to portray that idea to them. That's it.
Congratulations on your work.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. All the best. And 257, go dive right in.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Just share your screen.
Yes.
And for all the participants, at the 8th minute, you will hear a buzzer, so you know that you have the last 2 minutes left to wind up, okay?
Is my presentation visible?
Yes, you can start. Time
Okay.
start.
Yeah. So, good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to start with the location, telling you about the location of my site. The study area is located in Ahmedabad, just near the Textile Mill Owners Association building. It lies right in the center of the city. Ahmedabad city is divided in two parts through the Sabarmati River, which goes north-south. Well, I would like to start with a little bit of back inquiry, which I had started. So after getting all the calories in the lockdown in 2020, when I finally decided to start walking, I used to walk along this riverfront, which was done back in 2011 in Ahmedabad. And I had this one feeling that it's a bare concrete wall. And it led me to think that it kind of felt like a dystopian film like Blade Runner 2049 or like one of the scenes from movie called The Maze Runner. And which led me to think about the backstory and trying to go more deeper into it. So I dug into some of the visions when this riverfront was made in Ahmedabad, and I saw that there were a lot of people and all of those things in the views. But currently, on riverfront, there are guards at some places which don't even allow a person to move freely through the riverfront. This became a query to look a bit more into the background of Ahmedabad. Now, since 1950, Ahmedabad has been a kind of a hotspot for modernism per se, and so lots of infrastructure was built and in urban environment. And as of riverfront, it is a complete dam-like structure made out of concrete, and it continues approximately along 11 kilometers of the riverfront in order to hold the water. So these are some of the photos from the riverfront wall construction, and if you see that the walls were made according to 100-meter flood level, and behind that the sand from the riverbed from all around was brought in to fill inside. Now, if you see the land usage in Ahmedabad, since like one of the studies from IISc, it showed that Ahmedabad's tree cover went from 45% in 1970 to 4.66% currently, and which is likely to fall by less than 3% by 2030. So this led me to question that are we compromising on nature just for the sake of built environment? So this was one part where I studied the whole site and everything on an urban layer. Now I wanted to look into the plans which were made by HCP at the time, and I saw that they had proposed buildings with FSI 4 on Riverfront, which were to be sold commercially. And a future CBD is to be built in the Ashram Road area, where all buildings will have FSI of 4. So this is the site which I have marked, which is approximately 10,000 square meters. And on the right, we can see the visions for the riverfront, and already one of the building being made, which is currently by Sabarmati Riverfront Development Corporation. And this was made to give kind of an example of how the plots can be developed using building footprint concept. So now on an urban layer, this study was done. And now for the functions, like what kind of building should be done or what amenities should be given, I took a look at something which was very related to business. Now, if you see on this data on the right side over here, we can see that Gujarat is one of the best performers in startup culture in India, but though it ranks 5th in the number of startups which are coming. So since this is a CBD district, and if you see on the left-hand side bottom, the red point marks the site. So it's right inside the CBD. So the idea was to create an entrepreneurship and incubation center, which fuels this growth and goes with the vision of iHub, which is an initiative by the government of Gujarat. So the idea was to make this whole riverfront open to public, yet have the amenities for this function below, so that there is unhindered access for the city residents. So the idea was a layer of green layer and an entrepreneurship and innovation center. It started now for taking out the functions and deciding what factors it will be designed upon. I did a study of the riverfront on the activities. Now, as I said earlier, there's a same experience throughout the riverfront, which almost felt like an Asheric painting. So on the left hand side, we can see the human activities mapping, which I had done at the time. And the conditions which are happening right now, if you see in the section over here, there are two walls which divides the riverfront into an upper promenade and into a lower promenade. And the material palette is relatively very flat and very solid and raw. Now, on the other side, for the Innovation Center and Entrepreneurship Center, I took a look and did case study of various local and international entrepreneurship centers and where innovation happens. So, like MIT Media Lab, for here we have iCreate. And based on that, this was the kind of program which I tentatively derived. Not really program, but in what kind of fields the research would happen in the future, so that I can design facilities based on these fields. Now, these are both the layers in which there are individual amenities, and bringing them together, it creates one whole project. So since if you see these diagrams on the left hand side, there are 3 entries from to the site, and the second one shows the proposal which was done by HCP and regulated by the government, where they were using building footprint methods to have these big blocks of 5 floors. Yeah. So what the first thing that I decided was to not take the floors above two levels, that is ground and first floor, and take one floor below the ground level, which is there on the riverfront. So that if you see on the left and bottom side, the whole space can act as an experience for the citizens of Ahmedabad, and create varying opportunities to experience this connection with river from various places. The 10-year plan for making the city green was to have pioneer species being planted on site currently. The construction for this project won't start right now, but rather after 2 or 3 years, where this pioneer species are grown up to a level of 3 feet, and then they are transported to the edge along the riverfront, where there is currently no shade. So this was the final master plan which I had created with all the amenities like auditoriums, amphitheaters, boating jetty, and creating this varied experience which connects the lower promenade and it goes all the way to the top of the building and it seamlessly connects. There are no blockades. If we compare the sections that I had proposed with the current section, the 100-meter flood line has been maintained so as to not break the integrity of the structure. But behind that wall, the intervention has been done, and this intervention takes one up to the roof and gives a whole new level of experience for the visitors and users. So now, talking about the basic, I would like to talk about the basic functionalities of both these blocks, the amenities or the 6 fields that I had decided. I have made 2 blocks which contain AI and human cognition related research on one side, while biological related research happens on the other side. But if we see in the bottom, there is a basement floor where both of these blocks have workshops below. Since because the climate in Ahmedabad is really harsh, it's dry throughout the year and it reaches up to 43 degrees even right now. So having these workshop places below the ground but behind that riverfront wall would allow for lesser surface area to be exposed to the sun. And between these 2 blocks, there is a common entrance gallery at the center, which we can see number 4 on the left and bottom basement plan, where both of these buildings have innovations brought out over here and exhibited. So this was a simulation done to kind of compare the city proposal and my proposal. The idea was to reduce the amount of exposed surfaces or break them down rather than having this solid concept of a block. The bottoms, if you see on the bottom side, the elevation, the building, since it goes 1 floor below the ground, it doesn't really hinder between the city and the river, while all the surrounding buildings are really high.
So you exceeded your time. I suggest that you just keep scrolling through.
Yes.
You're not allowed to speak
Yes.
anymore while the jury can ask you questions manually. Okay, so just
Sure.
Yeah. Architect Nandu, would you want to go first this time? Or any of the other jury members?
So I have a very basic question. According to you, where is the joy in the proposal?
The joy in the proposal was trying to figure out a solution where this wall also functions as a flood retention thing, while it also changes the experience. Like every day, riverfront is being used in various ways, but the wall, which was kind of a common experience. So I tried to provide amenities by providing amphitheaters, connections from lower promenade to the top. And this can set an example for the future development, which happens along the riverfront.
So let me congratulate you on all the work you put in, but looks like you didn't plan for the 10 minutes. You could have taken us through the whole thing. Anyway, congratulations on the work.
Professor Ritu and Architect Amit?
So I have a question. You know, Ahmedabad is a city, it's got a history of great architecture. You agree?
Yes, absolutely.
And there is a legacy of, you know, doing buildings in a certain way that respond to the climate in a certain way. And I'm just wondering, you know, you've chosen to depart from that and you've chosen to go for a more, can I cite obscure references, but this looks like the Tillis, Scofidio and Renfrew Boston ICA Hall. And it has this hint of Snoheta's Oslo Concert Hall. It has tinges of very good contemporary architecture, right? Don't get me wrong. And I just think that as it's a very strong departure from what I would consider the Ahmedabad model for architecture, which is really big overhangs and really natural materials, and they really know how to do concrete very well in Ahmedabad. And you've chosen to not do that. And is there a reason for that?
Yes, absolutely. So there's a bit of the story behind what you asked. That initially I had a proposal for 2 months, which really followed the strong language which is there in the surroundings, like that of Le Corbusier's Atma House and the other buildings by B.V. Doshi. But after a time, like after some of the discussions, I was really encouraged to try to go beyond that limit. And like since one of the time, let's say in the past in 1950, when Louis Kahn came over here, he tried to depart, or even Le Corbusier, they tried to depart from the pole houses that we have here in Ahmedabad, which are made out of wood and bricks. And then again, that time he created that vocabulary out of bricks. Then concrete was used according to modernism. So I really felt this like a platform where I can develop and go into this next movement, into this next stage of contemporary architecture. Since Ahmedabad has a name associated with experimentation and rich architecture.
Okay, fine. That's fine. Thanks.
Yeah, Professor Ritu, any comments?
Yes. Again, thank you for your presentation. My query or I'm just wondering that you showed something about Sabarmati River in your earlier slides. How does that translate, or how does it link up to your work, or how does it connect with your design?
Yes, absolutely. So there were many studies which were carried out, which I could not present over here because of the limit of the initial submission that we had to do. But the idea was to connect the city and the riverfront. I studied two cities, that is Varanasi and Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad has a very parallel relation with Sabarmati, while Varanasi has a very perpendicular relation, where all the roads go up to the Ghats, and these Ghats go down to the river. While Ahmedabad has this parallel kind of blockage between the city road or the promenade and the river. So either you are along the river or you are not along the river. There are just two boundaries. The idea was to create an intervention in this wall itself and show a language where it has this perpendicular connection with the river, around which the actual Ahmedabad was built.
Yeah, but that is not very visible in your presentation, neither in your design drawings. So that's what my query was. Thank you so much.
Thanks, 257.
Thank
You can keep feeding on the comments as we move forward. I'll request 178 to start sharing your screen and start your presentation.
I would like to thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks. 178, are you ready?
I think his or her audio is not connected. Should we take in the next one?
Yeah, so what we'll do is call 296 and have 178 later.
वो सबने कर दिया.
296, you can begin your presentation, and we'll time it and we'll call 178 later.
Sure, ma'am. I'll just share my screen. Is it visible?
Yeah, you can start presenting and Priyanka will time you.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. For my thesis project, I have designed a socio-cultural art center located in Rohini, New Delhi. In my presentation, I'll be covering the following topics. Being a musician myself, I wanted to create a project for the upliftment of the artist. I was keen on reflecting the cultural aspect through various cultural art forms. Thus, The proposition was to form a cultural hub where artists from different backgrounds can come to promote, celebrate, and share their art forms with each other, and at the same time present to a larger audience. Hence, I choose a project proposed by DDA for a cultural center in Rohini. Research was carried out on the importance of art and culture in the society, which helped in understanding various cultural activities and formed the basis of my design. And later on became the basis for the area program. Principle of placemaking were also studied, which helped me better the public realm on site. Building standards and requirement was studied for the auditorium for their function. Case studies of cultural centers like Triveni Kalasangam in Delhi, Bharat Bhavan in Bhopal, and Kennedy Art Center in New York were done, which led to influences like providing public activities at ground level for greater footfall, building around courtyard, and designing transitory spaces. A case study on hotel and convention center was also done to learn more about their function and functional requirements. Thus, the total built-up area was 55,000 square meter. Broadly, the functions were convention hall, hotel, auditoriums, center for arts learning, center for performing arts, exhibition areas, and retail, which act as a handicraft market for selling the products made on site. The total site area is 11 hectares, abutting by the large green park known as Swarn Jayanti Park. From site analysis, different zones were marked. The lower zone being the with heavy pedestrian footfall, being the noisy edge, comparatively to the quieter upper edge with less pedestrian influx. The project vision is to create a common ground for various art forms. The overall concept was to create pedestrian accesses, creating the greens of the two edges of the site lined with public functions. The green arrow shows the pedestrian connection from one edge of the site to other edge, binding all the green spaces formed centrally in the site. The three blocks of Center for Learning Arts are placed together in one corner. The hotel and convention are kept at the quiet corner of the site with good views for the hotel rooms. And the auditorium and the performing arts center are kept on the side, which have great public access. Thus, by keeping the function at three edges, all the three nodes are activated. Coming to the form development and design iteration. Firstly, the building blocks were placed along small central green pockets. Further, a large central green was introduced, and then finally, pedestrian spine was incorporated. Better connections of spine and central green spaces were then enhanced. Now, starting with my final drawing, design drawings. The main entrance for the Center of Arts was taken from the main road, which is 48-meter roads, and the drop-off was directly onto the pedestrian spine. For the performing arts center, the entrance was taken from 36-meter road, and the drop-off was on the entrance plaza. The continuous peripheral road makes it possible to connect all the different functions internally within the site. The central space is purely pedestrian, and the spine connects the Center of Learning Arts to the performing arts through the green spaces. Starting with the Center of Arts. The performing art block, here, this is the ground floor plan. Here you can see the shops are arranged on this along the spine, and the central court acts as an extended learning area for these classrooms. This is the view of the retail street from the main road. The use of pivot doors in classroom make them barrier-free and establish a visual connection inside out. To form outdoor terraces at various levels, the form is stepped. This is what the terraces look like from the corridor. Coming to the visual art, which have functions like painting, sketching, graphic, animation, and drafting labs. The external staircases have been planned to have a visual connect with the courtyards. Due to singly loaded corridor, one does not feel that he's inside a closed building. Here you can see how the open terraces are used for the open performance in other functions. This is a view of the Center of Art from the main road, showing the pivot doors. This is the Center of Media block, which all the three blocks, the performing art blocks, visual arts, and mass media, are connected at the upper level for a better interaction between different art forms through bridges. Here you can see what the bridge looks like. This is the outdoor exhibition area with a small water body along it. Various classrooms like instrument room, art room, rehearsal hall can be seen here. Now coming to the Performing Arts Center, which has 3 auditorium, proscenium theatre, black box theatre, and thrust auditorium, along with an OAT. The 850-seater auditorium, which is the proscenium theatre, is divided into 3 levels with balcony seatings. The other block is consists of a 350-seater black box theatre, above which is the 500-seater thrust auditorium. Here in this isometric diagram, we can see how the auditorium sit on one of top each other. This is the render for open air theatre. Coming to the hotel and convention block, here you can see the convention block consists in one arm and hotel lobby on another, with each getting their own drop-off. This is what hotel looks like from the main pedestrian spine. This section is through the Center of Arts and Auditorium, shows the pedestrian entry and the space frame above it. This section is cut from the central court, where the step terraces are used for informal gigs and performances. Section through Center of Art and Hotel, highlighting the use of pivot doors and green terraces in hotel and pedestrian spine. The main elevation from the Swan Jayanti Park. The parking requirement of cars have been split into 2 basement levels. Coming on to some 3Ds. This is the view of open air theatre. The aerial view highlighting the open terraces and the OAT. The view from the corridor of Learning Arts Center. The pedestrian spine connecting the small green courtyards. The planar view showing the peripheral arrangement of the build blocks. Coming to the technology armature, passive strategies like courtyard, green roof, interwoven indoor and outdoor spaces have been used. Pivot doors, jalis, and vertical louvers have been used as a shading device. Vertical louvers are great for shading, and pivot doors provide great cross ventilation. Waffle slabs have been used in exhibition area where large column-free spaces were needed. Truss systems were used in auditoriums. For fire safety, fire path is kept from any hindrance, and appropriate number of fire staircases have been provided. Water tank and STP tank have been provided as per calculation. Thank you so much. Hope you have enjoyed my thesis journey from research to concept to design. Thank you so much.
Well done, 296. You were bang on time. Now, may I ask the jury members to ask their cues or give their feedback?
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, can I go ahead?
Sure, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just some quick question, like you were mentioning that this is a socio-cultural arts center and it represents certain art and crafts, okay? How did you develop the module for these art and crafts? Were there certain arts and crafts that you have kind of, created some facilitation study or space activity relationship study for? Because for the in the time saver standards, you don't see the standards for these kind of activities. So you would have to create this for the art and craft that you are thinking of incorporating in your project.
Yes, ma'am. So in terms of the program, I did 3 different studies. The first one was understanding the importance of culture. When I did the study, I recognized that the Indian culture or the culture in general is divided into several parts. So one of the part was performing arts, which when I delved deeper, there were different art forms like art and craft, music or dance, or maybe theater. So in terms of their functional requirement, I did uh, 3 and 4 case studies of different art centers and find out that what all functional requirement is needed. And in some labs there were not many example. So in my personal background, I am an artist and a musician, so I did research on the equipment that is needed in that classroom and design and did the functional requirement for the same.
Yes, but then it does it satisfy, because it does not reflect in your modules. All your modules look similar. And that was the first observation. Second thing which I had to ask you was that in the overall, you have, completed all the technical requirements of a thesis and the drawings and all of it. But when you present that, what is the language of architecture you're portraying or presenting for the onlookers?
Okay. So, ma'am, I basically have divided the Center of Arts into 3 parts: mass media, music, and dance. And the music Center of Arts, which is dedicated to music, have a specialized room in terms of soundproofing and the scale. And dance rooms have the requirement they need like big mirrors or open spaces. One sheet dedicated to it. And coming to your second question, the design language that I'm trying to portray is that I don't want to create something new on this, like something very different from what the surrounding is. I want my architecture to get blend with the surroundings. That's why I've created 2 pedestrian spine connecting with the greens. So these are the different type of classrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Architect Amit, would you like to give your feedback?
Well, I don't really have a question, but this is for 296. I would like to just say that as a project, this I think is too ambitious in scale for a thesis, because it is not only the urban design of a large area, it is also the detailed design of several buildings and trying to get them together to work. I just think it's a very ambitious scale on which to do a thesis. I would have been satisfied if you had just done an urban design or an urban edge treatment. And what happens because of that is, because of the scale of the project and because of the several technical requirements of all the auditoriums and exits, etc. I think there hasn't been time to develop a narrative of what the edge looks like. I see that, again, this is not something which is your problem. This is probably something that is an issue at your advisor's level, where you perhaps were given too much scope. I think this should have been an exercise in developing a good urban edge, right? However, I see that you have, again, it's not your fault. You have done what I'm guessing the rules and regulations tell you to do, that there needs to be a setback and there needs to be a boundary wall and all of that. And given that it's in Rohini, given that it's in the center of not center but part of a very large city, it would have been better if it was. It's a lost opportunity to create a good quality, urban environment. So, but otherwise, I think it's a good effort overall. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Nandu sir?
Yeah. So I totally agree with Amit on those observations, that way too ambitious for a thesis and definitely a lost opportunity on that edge. See, what you've done is the most on the edge. So it's almost a uniform edge across the whole site plan that you look at it, the scale and everything. So you connect it through the, you let the public come through your thing, but what are the paybacks for walking through those paths, right? That is not there. The other thing is your project is probably the most complete side, like a building. But what you're losing out is, where is the metaphor, right? What is the, so you said you started out by saying I'm a musician, right? So where, again, I'm tempted to ask the same question. Where's the joy in your thesis? What's your joy, right? So the use of metaphors is what imbues meaning to architecture. Otherwise, they're buildings, right? So you might be missing on that. You might want to revisit that side of things. And, but quite a bit of rigorous work you've done on the thing. So congratulations on that. Best wishes on the rest.
Thank you so much.
296, I hope you have taken all the feedback in positive spirit. So you may leave the room, and may I now request 178 to start presenting.
Hello. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible right now.
It is visible. Please put it on full screen.
Yes. So, hello and good evening to everyone. My thesis is called Festival Plaza, which is my thesis is called Festival Plaza, which is located on the riverfront of Ahmedabad along the Sabarmati River. And the site is currently an event ground at the moment, and which is used for big conventions or industrial conventions, and the ground is used for once or twice a year, and then leaving the entire space on the riverfront, the major spine of the Ahmedabad, leaving it unused and inaccessible for rest of the time. So the site is around 4 hectares in area with currently no built up on site. So the primary idea of this thesis, the idea for Festival Plaza, was to revisit Indian carnivals for vitalizing the contemporary urban spaces, and the program here traces the fading Indian carnival taking places in the suburban places of India. The idea of this plaza is to propose urban interventions that triggers activities and eventually vitalizes the ground which is unused most of the time. So these interventions would create engagement and interactions among its users as well as with the built environment. So this exercise of Festival Plaza started with interpreting festivals or the Indian carnivals in an architectural space. So during the during execution or the festival, whenever they are happening, they usually come up on an unused patch in the outskirts of the city, where the festival happens, and it often becomes a go-to place for people to break out of their mundane urban environment. So this kind of interventions usually create buzz, or I like to say it as yellow box over a gray canvas. So they usually create spaces for performances, collaboration, and exhibitions around the region, and it eventually makes person who is navigating to pause, think, and interact with the environment that they are in. So not only that, the festivals also act as host, or as an intervention, it acts as host, which triggers multiple activities around themselves, such as performances taking places, food markets happening around, and such things. So, so this was the interpretation of a festival in an architectural space. So to sum up the intention of the program, this plaza is an overlap between the opportunity to learn, collaborate, and experience the work of great, and also a place to pass your day. So the program is divided into two parts. First one is the festival center, which is built part and has all the formal functions to it, which acts as the host, and it has functions such as formal functions such as auditoriums, exhibition halls, galleries, and etc. They are mainly divided into two categories: culture and knowledge, which promotes culture and knowledge. And the second part is plaza, which takes shape as a byproduct or as a trigger of the built mass. And the plaza is a public space which has unrestricted access and movement. So the plaza here is treated in three primary aspects: the image, feel, and functions of the area. So overall, the program is visioned to be promoting social harmony in the riverfront of Ahmedabad by providing an exclusive platform for dialogue and fostering relevant theme-based programs. So the site, as I said, on the riverfront is located just near NID Ahmedabad. This is the primary riverfront lower promenade where the people can have access to the lower promenade and or eventually direct access to the river. The site is an elevated ground of about 4.5 meters from the lower promenade and 1.5 meters from the primary road. It has retaining walls on all the four sides of it. So for the urban conditions and strategies to be followed here, the first one was to check for the visibility, where since the site is elevated from the ground, it gives a direct visibility to functions such as the flower park on the north, the river, of course, on the east, and the primary promenade, which is usually very active in the evenings there. So and the second one is that the current accessibility of the site is just one vehicular access, and the rest ones are the pedestrian accesses. So the strategies to be taken was to increase the visibility of the area by catering to the three functions which are around, as I mentioned, flower park, river, and the promenades, and also to increase the porosity of the site by making them blend with the environments. And by environment, I mean the lower promenade and the access road. So to remove compound wall while maintaining the height of the area, because they are taken as per the flood levels of Ahmedabad. So the exercise started with imagining the spatial character of how I want or how an architecture of this place should be like for interpreting a festival in a place. So it started with the building, which is blurred with its landscape, where it allows access to different parts of the building, even while the person is not inside the building. With street furnitures revolving around different outdoor exhibitions, and the kites and seaplanes which are currently being which Riverfront is known for different celebrations, and the landscape with different installations and kiosk for as I mentioned, theme-based programs. Another idea was the Riverfront is also known to be exploring different dynamic screens for for giving statements or interacting with users. So how can such a facade or how can a building interact with its user using the dynamic facade? So the exercise on site, or I would say the laying out functions of the site, started with different typological explorations, where the exercise explored the possibilities and opportunities of different massing and configuration that can be followed for this project in the context. So some of the options were linear layout, where the layout would increase the exposure of the building to the river, or with a courtyard where the court can provide control environment, and these court would also create pause point while moving from one function to the another. So from one part of the building to another. The one of the other option was the porous building, which allows building to be placed on site while also avoiding the restrictions of the movement around the site. And the last one was the spreading the massing or the functions into different fragments so that it creates different activity spots around it. And so the outcome of this study helped in identifying the requirement of additive and subtractive elements as per requirement of the functions. For the major zoning, the site followed the gradient of public plaza here with going private as it goes on the north. And since being the elevated, it restricted the primary access with the actual river and the lower promenade. So one of the idea was to allow access which would also increase the footfall on the site. So as I mentioned, the program are divided into culture and knowledge. So the functions were primarily divided into two segments where the person could enter the building according to their interest, and then the building is then again connected so that the user can move from one segment to another without getting out of the building. So this is what the knowledge wing is, and this is the culture wing with some public functions which cater to the landscape here. And the section here shows how the connection of the primary access and the river and the lower promenade happens through the building and without even entering into the building, but the person goes through the plaza and the activity is happening in the plaza. So on the overall layout, these are the public grounds and yeah. So between the buildings there are experiment plazas where artists could have their different installations with different timelines, and buskers place and the main plaza. This is the section. This is section through the exhibition hall with multiple scales of with multiple volumes in different spaces, which allow functions to spill out and their activities too. And on the overall plaza detail, as it was one of the idea was to blend building with the landscape. So it allows the user to the upper decks of the building, which overlooks to different functions happening in the plaza. And this is the edge towards the lower promenade, which has different planters. And instead of having such a hard vertical wall, this kind of step would allow some porosity to the site. Also, it would the building would respect the river and not ignore it. It has different.
Your time is up. Actually, we have a little time crunch, so could we just move on to the jury members? And
yes.
You may refer to slides if the relevant question comes. If I may ask Architect Amit to start with giving comments or asking the questions.
So can you just show me a riverside section? The one at the bottom, is that the one?
Yes.
Do you have a more detailed one, or do you have a view?
They are shown with this edge. On the lower, this is the lower promenade, and it enters, the one person enters to the plaza through these steps.
Okay. Do you have any more views?
No.
Okay.
These two.
Just zoom into that section.
Can you zoom into the section? And how many levels is this building?
There are 3 floors.
This is damn good. It's a good idea. It's a good brief. it's a good site, but a lot of things going for it. I mean, I just think it, as a scale, right, it maybe could have been more brave. I don't know what to say. I mean, when I look at the section and I see perhaps that one floor at 20 feet, in my mind, when you talk about a festival space, you're looking at a Maidan as a reference, and you want that sense of grandness, that sense of, not grandness, but just that sense of large scale. It's very good. And I think you should have had more representational drawings. We can't really read the text on a presentation like this. So maybe some large graphics should help. Anyway, good.
Thank you, sir.
Architect Nandu sir, would you like?
Yeah. So 178, I guess, beautiful graphic presentation. Love the quality of quality and the clarity on theme across the project. Now, there are two bridges across your site, right?
Yes.
You just use them as the bookends for your project. There's an opportunity there where the bridges are quite dynamic, the way the traffic flows, people looking at your project and your site and all that. Any reason for ending it between the bridges? The opportunity under the bridge is always quite interesting, right? So any reason for not just crossing it? And the other one is, I like the way you have this multiple layers and opportunities to do different stuff. Maybe a bit of a modulation on the scale. I don't know, but congratulations on that. So that question about the use of why not use the bridges? Go ahead.
Yes. So if I zoom into this part, as I mentioned, this is the knowledge wing, the culture wing. So the idea was to first segregate people according to their interests, so that it does not create clutter into different foyers. So even though there's bridge above, the access, both the foyers.
No, I'm not talking of the bridges in your project. I'm talking of ones on the river.
Yes.
Right? I get this part of it.
Yes.
Right? If you go to your site plan.
Yes, this one, these two. Hello.
You have these two bridges, right? Yes. Which is your site.
Yes.
My question was, any reason for not going across? Yeah, that's.
Yeah. So for the initial point of view, during the taking decisions, this is the pedestrian footover bridge, which is about to finish right now here in Ahmedabad. So the idea was since this is the footover bridge which connects different banks of the river, it would access, but since it does not exist yet, so it was not taken for the design.
Okay. But there's definitely an opportunity there to sort of get it into your thing, to the pedestrian. Maybe they get an option to walk into this space. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Congratulations on your work.
Thank you.
Rituma?
Thank you, 178, for the presentation. And as mentioned by the earlier two jurors, it was a very clairvoyant presentation. My only concern is regarding the kind of graphics you have shown. It does not give a clear picture about the kind of vocabulary you're creating for the riverfront. So that is something I'm worried about. I mean, what is the thing that what is the kind of language you're creating for the riverfront? That is number one. Number two is that the river in your case, is it only a visual entity, or are you also connecting physically to the river? Like, can people also connect to the river physically?
Yes, ma'am. So the site is this is the current condition where this is the site on elevated. So my idea was to blend the edges of the site, which would eventually connect the lower promenade and the access, and also kind of let people wander around the site wherever the spillovers or the temporary activities are happening. And also for the language point of view, because I did not have time much left with me. So this is the eastern elevation, which has the maximum for increasing the view towards the building. This is the eastern, I would say, wall section where there are multiple solid bands, but yet it has a lot of glass to always look into the river and also to the activities happening in this part. If I show this diagram, the blue one shows the circulation in the building.
I'm extremely sorry, 17 don't have that much time. So thank you for the presentation. Let's move on to the last presentation of the day and for the thesis category. 204, are you ready? 178, you may leave the room.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Just
Please start sharing your screen. Put it on full screen, we can see it.
yes, ma'am.
All the best.
Good evening, everyone. So my thesis project has been named as Humans, Conflicts, Responses Walking Through the Walls of Time. So as we know, violent conflicts have been an inevitable part of human history since Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. There have been wars between empires and kingdoms, civil war within the country, world war between the nations, and various conflicts between communities and religions. So apart from physical devastation, these such violent conflicts cause a lot of intangible effect to the human life, like displacement and forced migration, limited economic exchanges, hate speeches, fear and cultural expressions, loss of identity, and ultimately at city level, we see formation of ghettos. So what could be the ideal responses to such situations? So first is eradicating the fears and notions about the others, acknowledging the presence of conflicts present in the society, improving the infrastructure, public spaces for better interaction, improving the lifestyle and built spaces for such interactions, ultimately which will improve the social and cultural relationships. So where does an architect plays role in such situations? So we have seen a lot of examples around the world where architects have created a huge impact in society through their work, like Butaro Hospital in Rwanda, social housing in Chile, and social urbanism in Medellin. So that provoked a thought that how can an architect help in such situations or do for the society. So the history of communal conflicts in India. The first seed was sown by Britishers, where they divided and where they adopted the policy of divide and rule. On the basis of that policy, they divided the country into two parts on the basis of religion, which caused a great migration and a lot of violence. So after violence, we saw four major conflicts in 83, 84, 92, and in 2002, which was the most recent, the Godhra riots in Gujarat. So post Godhra riots, what's the situation in Ahmedabad? So post Godhra riots, we see a lot imposition of laws like Disturbed Areas Laws Act. We see constant policing and fear in people in sensitive areas, and due to which there is a creation of a lot of ghettos based on religion in Ahmedabad. So post Godhra riots, we saw a great migration from both the communities, Hindus and Muslim, into different areas from the core walled city of Ahmedabad, which caused three major Muslim ghettos, which is Bapunagar, Shah Alam, and Juapura. The most recent one is Juapura. So Juapura is basically the Muslim majority area, which is juxtaposed next to the Hindu majority area, Vijalpur. So we can see this conflict and this presence of social stigma in the people's head through this case of notional border, which is present in Juapura and Vijalpur. So as you can see, this is the notional border, the road between the two areas, which has such tall compound walls which is the presence, which is a physical manifestation of this notion in people's mind, and this stigma present in the society. People from this area do not cross this road, and people from this area don't go there. So the road acts as a notional border to the place. So after looking at this social stigma and this complexity of this problem, I decided. So I thought, what could be the approach, or what could be the built approach to address such problems? Because in India, we don't address such problems through architecture. Like Germany has, Berlin has Jewish museum to address the Holocaust, but in India, we don't address such negative thoughts. So I decided to rather to have a built programmatic approach to the built environment. I decided to have a symbolic approach where, the people are actually made to acknowledge the presence of this conflict, because we don't know that this conflict is in our head, but it has been transcending through generations, and even a small hate speech would spark a riot later. So it's important to acknowledge this issue. So looking at the walls at Juapura and the walls created in people's head, I decided to use walls as an element in my design, to where it divides people. Somewhere it divides people, somewhere it will connect people, or in somewhere eventually the wall will become enclosure and enclose people. So after that, I thought, how should such space should be. So here are some of my design intentions. Like, it should have a sense of openness. It should have where nature is used as a symbolism. The space should be user defined, and no programmatic compulsion should be posed on the people. It should be a journey. It should be a journey where you discover things and you get kind of lost into the spaces, and ultimately you reach to a space where you have a sense of reflection, and where you can reflect on the incidents and the issues, and you can contemplate on them. So in all, it should be a place where people comes, and it becomes a place of healing for the people, where they can move freely and they can acknowledge the presence of conflict, and ultimately they can heal and mourn about the incident. So the main idea was about this design was to link the memories. So how can I do that? So there were houses in the old Ahmedabad. So after riots, only the walls remained as a ground, as a memory, and in the mind of the people. So I decided to create two kinds of wall. One, a new wall, and the other one, which is a wire mesh wall filled with gravels, which kind of encapsulates the past. So there is a wall for present and there is a wall for past. So the building kind of becomes a symbol for past and the future. And ultimately, I came to, through my design process, I came to a form which has ultimately the no edges. So basically, the building has no prejudice towards any community or it does not subscribe to any ideology as such. So I decided to the building to have a circular form. So now where should I place such building in this in reference to the Ahmedabad? So I decided to place my building in front of the existing historical fort wall of Ahmedabad, and this land has which is situated in between Nehru Bridge and Ellis Bridge. So this land is also has a historical significance because Mahatma Gandhi, the propagator of peace, gave his last speech, gave his famous last speech before Dandi March on this land. So I decided to place my structure on this land, which becomes kind of a symbol which becomes a symbol of peace and acknowledgement of presence of conflict. So I decided the building, it should be a journey where people can come. So you enter into a dark space, then you slowly walk through a long ramp where there are staggered light slits and undulated walls, which kind of gives a sense of disturbance to it. Then through walking through these walls, you feel the hello. Oh, sorry. So walking through these walls, you ultimately reach to a blank space, and then you enter to a gallery where you find this is the gallery of conflicts, where history and timelines of different conflicts are presented. And after a long walk from the path of violence, where you ultimately reach to the space of acknowledgement. So how do I design a space for acknowledgement? So I decided to encapsulate a fabric of Ahmedabad into a circle where there are no life, where there is no life, there are no house left. Only the common walls are there and nothing else left. So by this, and after extruding these common walls and placing a elevated ramp which provides an universal accessibility to me, so this becomes a space where people can just come in, walk down to these streets, and they get a feeling of walking into a dead city, where they feel like they are walking in a dead city with no life and no people left inside. So here's a sectional view of that space. You come here from that ramp, you can just climb down into these streets like spaces. From this ramp you can just climb down and you can see the spaces around where we have placed curations based on these memories and these riots. So basically the building is tucked inside the ground such that you get these kind of big volumes and the light quality. And from outside you just see a circular structure with wire mesh walls. So after these spaces of acknowledgement and dark negative spaces, one reaches to the space for retrospection, where they can be under the open sky and just sit and resolve all these conflicts and contemplate on the losses. So it becomes a place to heal and contemplate. So similarly, this building is also tucked inside the ground 2.5 meters, where to achieve such volumes. And even these walls can hold curations about the life and death. So this is the place where you cut through these infinity water body, and you can meet in between and resolve the conflicts, and someone can just sit down and remember his loved one who lost their life in these riots. So this is the space for reflection. And
202, your time is up. You can just scroll if you want.
Yeah.
And we shall start with the jury comments. If I may request Architect Amit to go in first.
Can you very quickly just scroll through the
so sir, this is the space for reconciliation. So I didn't make any building. I just kind of with the idea that I have to break that notional wall into pieces. So I spread walls of different sizes and different scale throughout my site, so that they can be used for exhibitions and display, for pavilions, for meeting spaces, and the whole plaza becomes a space for gathering and
right. Can you just show me an overview? Okay.
Yeah, so these are all kinds of wall and spaces, and in foreground of the fort wall you just only see the two structures. That is, one is white circular building and the other one is the wire mesh circular things, which with all these broken walls.
It's very interesting.
This is the section where below which I have shown that you start from a point, you experience the whole journey, and ultimately you come out from here, somewhere here.
Like I was saying, it's very interesting.
So yes, sir. As I showed you, enter from here, and you somewhere come out from here.
Right.
So more of my idea was to make building as more of a sculpture of realization, rather than to have a programmatic building where we bring in the people from both the communities and like we make them reconcile. But rather than that, I believe that I should make a symbolic attempt. So the whole project becomes a start point for this reconciliation process. So short solution, that's why I named it as a response, not as a solution to this problem.
It's very interesting. I just have one comment. Your building is an experience from one stage to another stage to another stage. But as a piece of architecture, it can't just have the novelty of a singular experience. right? It's not a movie that you watch once or a book that you read once, or it's architecture is permanent, right?
Yes.
And what you're saying is that this journey through confusion, and then through through the large circular building, and then through the retrospection place, I think it's great as a first time experience. But what happens to this space? Is it only for first time users? Is there space beyond, for is it a public space beyond
Yes, sir.
the the experience of walking through the building for the first time? Is there more to this intervention?
So, sir, basically, yes, it is a public space. Like as I said, that I have placed just a minute. As I have placed all these walls around my site throughout the spaces. So, if you can see, there are a lot of different kind of spaces available just to sit. So, these wall acts as the follies for the people. Like they can use the way they want. They can just have a cover inside, and we can have vaccination drives, or we can have the COVID, something like that, or any kind of community can basically use this space, and the same wall becomes a bench somewhere, so people can just sit around in the trees, and so it becomes a public space also. So apart from the journey, these walls becomes follies for the public. So basically, it's a public space with the two sculptures of realization put in between.
It's very good. What do I say? It's very good, and your graphics are amazing. I'm just concerned that it's a singular experience, and I would have, if you had added one more layer of experience on it. I mean, something that brings people in more times. Like, I'll give you an example. The memorial at the World Trade Center, it's just water falling into those two pits, right?
Yeah.
It's not it. There's other stuff, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
powerful.
So, sir, my idea was to place the space of realizing, the space of retrospection at the end was also there. There was one of the concern, like, should I make people enter from the outside or from the ground level rather than the basement level or the ramp level? But then it kind of hampers that quality of wow, or the feeling of discovery when you enter from that room. So basically, someone, if you just want to sit in under the space, he can just enter and walk in from this space also. But just to have that feeling of discovery, and not that the space opens up simply.
I should congratulate
not to give an access from the ground level.
I should congratulate your thesis advisor for letting you do this, because it's very good. I mean, I just, like I've already said what I had to, but it's quite good.
Thank you, sir.
Moving on to Architect Ritu.
Hello, 204.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, hello. Good attempt. And as Architect Khanna has already mentioned, that it's a very brave attempt. And because in a country like India, I have an apprehension of how many people are going to appreciate the kind of spaces that you have designed or not designed. So that is something we have to, think about, because the kind of spaces you have articulated require also some matured audience or people to accept and appreciate that. So that is what I think Architect Khanna was trying to reiterate, that you will have to pull people to your site through some other activities as well, and create a kind of what you can say, special narrative for some other things also to be experienced on your site. So that is again something which you need to think about. Other than that, I have a question regarding the reason why you chose to make these structures as they are, like the two volumes that you have designed. The others are, of course, underground, but the 2 volumes that you've designed, what is the reason for it to be like that? Very quickly, if you could
So, ma'am, I
mention.
basically wanted to have I wanted to show 2 buildings. One is totally, which looks like a broken building, which is more of a damaged building, and the other one is a plain circular white structure. So basically, I wanted to show that journey from the broken to the reconciliation. So that basically it was a metaphor for the from conflicts to reconciliation. Like it becomes a point. So the broken structure becomes a point for after post-conflict era, and the new building becomes kind of a symbol of a future.
Okay, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I have to congratulate you on a brave choice of thesis topic and doing a fabulous job of working at it. Like Amit, it also reminded me of the memorial in New York. And as he said, what's my take on the second time I come in, and what's the take on the third or fourth time I come here again, right? That
Yes,
think
sir.
about that. You have this very linear journey
Yes,
right now, but you could. So the other building I was thinking about was also the Jewish Museum in Berlin by
yes,
Libeskind. All the different kind of experiences he layers onto that museum. So one could be that you have this singular path. That's your first journey to it. Maybe you do a second path on top. Maybe it might be interesting to look at everything from the outside
yes,
too, right? Think about it. And you have a linear thing. What about doing a different set of layering on the other direction? Might be interesting. Something you could think about in time. One of those experiences, that architecture school by Caesar in Porto. He's got these 2 experiences. He's got a set of buildings connected by a path. There are 2 options to the path. There's a path that goes in the courtyard, right? So you've done a fabulous job. And there's no 2 ways about it. But just other things you could think about. So congrats to you. And as Samit said, congrats to the thesis advisor who allowed you to do what you did. Fabulous. Congrats.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks 204 for your wonderful work. Team NASA, can we stop broadcasting so that we can quickly have the jury deliberation? 204, you can leave.